Welcome to the Elements of Success podcast with Johnny Dawson. This is the show that will inspire you to uncover your formula for success so you take charge of your story, overcome life's obstacles, and find fulfillment in all branches of life. With Johnny as your guide, you will break down the science of success and experiment with how you can combine key elements to uncover discipline you need to accelerate your journey towards prosperity. Now, on to today's episode.
Welcome to the Elements of Success podcast, where we will explore traits that have helped others achieve success. Our hope is to inspire you to discover your own element of success. Today, we're joined by my co-host, Eric Johnson, and Ohio Senator Stephanie Kunze. Eric, as always, it's a pleasure to be on the show with you. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm extremely excited about our guest today. Very special dear friend to me, Stephanie Kunze, who is Ohio Senator. Stephanie, thank you for being on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me, both of you. Absolutely.
And Eric, I'm assuming your day is going perfectly fine as per usual.
Yes, I'm just waiting for this interview. I'm so excited. You have a fantastic guest, so let's get to this.
Absolutely. So kind of funny story to start. And this is going to go back about a decade when I first started out in finance. And at the time, I was going door to door in our community and wearing full suit and tie in the middle of August just necessarily isn't that fun. And one day I knocked on this door and lo and behold, Stephanie answered it. And Stephanie was one of the most welcoming people that I'd met knocking on doors and just introduced myself as a new business owner at the ripe age of 26 years old. And we had a phenomenal conversation, and I was already having a horrible day just because every person I talked to was either incredibly rude or would just reject anything that I was saying. It was almost like a pandemic exists back then because I was just randomly knocking on doors. So it was kind of funny. And I mentioned to Stephanie, I said, you know what? This neighborhood is so welcoming. I would love to live in a neighborhood like this. And then ironically, 3 years later, I ended up moving in 2 houses down from her. And we joke about that all the time, her and Matt and I do, and Bora. And it's so funny, but honestly, thank you for being so welcoming. And I know that's just who you are as a person, and I appreciated it. And I didn't realize it might've been election season that year, but that could have played a part too, right?
Actually, I was going to make the joke that I knock on so many doors myself that I was grateful to be able to repay the favor of being nice to someone at the door, because that's usually my role, is knocking on doors to talk to people and ask for their time. So
it's so funny that you say that, because Bora had almost like what would we call it? A superstition, to where if someone knocked on our door, whether they were selling gas, ADT, whatever it may be, security system, she always talked to them, because she's like, okay, my husband does this. So if I'm rude to them, someone else may be rude to him. So, and I would come home and she's like, hey, we got a new security system. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, I felt obligated because that's what you go do. And it was hilarious. So it's great that you gave me that time, because it really did change my attitude and demeanor that day, just because you were so welcoming. And it plays into the word that you chose as your element of success, and that's mindset. And mindset is defined as an established set of attitude held by someone. So let me ask you this: when you were thinking about your own element of success, why did mindset kind of resonate so much with you?
Yeah, it was really hard to pick just one word. About probably 7 years ago, I start each new year with a word of the year. And I was very intentional about picking a word. I prayed about it. I thought about it. I pondered it, that would really kind of encompass what I wanted my goal to be for that year. And so I have like 7 words that are probably in the element of success that I'm looking back on. And so one of the things when you asked me, what would be the one word, I even asked my family, I was like, what do you think? What is the one word? And they were like, Mom, you need more than one. But I really felt like growth mindset is really where, and that's probably why I opened the door for you. It's probably why I go knocking on doors. Really the attitude of I can learn from anyone. I mean, look what a great friend I've made because I opened that door that day. Like I would have missed out on so many things had I not just been welcoming and opened the door to you. Absolutely. And so I feel like, that's the attitude, I guess, that I take into all of my situations, my work, my friendships, whatever it is. I always have something to learn from someone because I try to have a growth mindset.
And truly, that is, I think that really defines you as well, because from everything I know about you as a person and how caring you are and just the humility that you add to any situation, it's easy to see that the mindset that you've created is not just how does this affect me, but how does this affect everyone? And it's easy to see that. And even today, with your role with being a senator right now in the world of politics, the media necessarily probably isn't the most trusted source of information that we all look at and think about. How can we all take what you've done and change our mindsets to have a better understanding of one another and within our own situations?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think at the core, everyone wants to feel seen and heard. And that's really the basic. They want a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, and they really want other people to recognize them and what their experiences are. And so I think really recognizing that we're a lot more alike than we are different as it relates to the media and some of, how you interact with maybe your elected officials and that type of thing. I, about probably 5 years ago, really made a conscious effort to read my news more so than watch it.
Yeah.
And if I do watch the news, I watch several different sources. And I also, obviously you can Google anything. So there's, if someone wants to learn more about me and my work in the state Senate, I have an official website that has, all of the bills that I've voted for, passed, worked on. There's definitely ways to find that information yourself, but I think it's definitely changing kind of our attitudes as consumers of the media and of news to really recognize that not every single thing we see and hear is somehow not with an opinion. And so really trying to find that middle ground and figure out what is maybe, where the truth lies on some of these issues. I think it's important for us to really investigate and do some of our own work and work looking into, instead of just being fed a steady diet of news media and just taking it as the gospel truth.
Absolutely. And I've been a proponent of, if you want to change your mindset, you have to put yourself in a position that would change your mindset, right? And it's so easy in today's world, I feel, to just have an opinion about something or a situation, or even, like you said, a bill or legislation. It's easy to have an opinion about that without ever experiencing how you would be affected or how it affects others. And it's very unfortunate that with the world of social media, it is so fast to type in a message out of emotion rather than developing a mindset of humility, not only a mindset of caring and acting, but of a mindset of growth too. And we all fear change, which is the number one fear that anyone has, is a fear of change. But if you develop a mindset of openness, which you did the day that I knocked on your door, and you do every day in the position you're in, if you develop a mindset of openness, it allows us to experience things on a broader range that we necessarily can't experience within our own circumstances. So I love the fact that you have developed a mindset. And I think what you said earlier is phenomenal. If you just looked and prayed and decided upon one theme, one word, one element of success a year, and you were intentional about that, where would you be at the end of that year to where you began, right? So question here is, if you were talking to someone and maybe they're struggling with their own mindset, maybe they're caught up in the emotions of life, or they feel defeated, they can't quite figure out what to do, they've plateaued. COVID has created this world of plateau, I think, for the past year. What would you tell them to help establish their element of mindset of growth?
I think you have to start with gratitude. It's the foundational word and attitude. And even when you don't feel grateful, that's probably the best time to just start making a list of even just the smallest things that you're grateful for, because it really is the attribute that really starts to change and shift in your mind. And the brain science actually proves this, which is fascinating. But the more that you start just identifying, whether it's, it's a beautiful sunny day, I'm grateful for the weather, or I saw a small child outside today playing, soccer, and they looked really happy, and I was grateful that I had an opportunity to witness that. Or, whether it's something really large, like I had something else fantastic happen, whatever it is, I think really starting to list and think about what you're grateful for and all of the blessings that you really do have on a daily basis, it shifts your focus. And it really is a foundational change to, it's probably the foundation for growth mindset.
Absolutely. And you have just given us so much great information just now, just with the 15, 20, 30-minute conversation we're having. And I think we could all learn from what Stephanie has just said. And it does not, everything that was mentioned in this doesn't matter what color you go to the polls on. It doesn't matter what news channel that you tune into. What matters is you take proactive steps to change your mindset. And you cannot do that without being intentional. Like Stephanie had mentioned earlier, write down a word, and it doesn't have, you don't have to wait till January to do this. Write it down right now. Write down a word that kind of resonates in your heart. And maybe it is mindset. How do I start changing my mindset one day at a time instead of a mindset of plateau or woe is me, my situation's horrible? You have to change your mindset to show gratitude. And I think that's the first step. Start writing things down that you're grateful for, and then that will start to begin to shift your mindset in a way of perspective and perseverance, and all of these other elements that Stephanie has encompassed in who she is can help you encompass who you are. Eric, as always, I love hearing your final thoughts and your questions, because I know you're biting here, waiting to ask Stephanie some questions. So what would you add or contribute, maybe a question or two that you would want to ask Stephanie of how she's created this wonderful mindset of success?
Well, the thing that just struck me was that, Stephanie, you are selfless, and I can hear that in your voice. I can hear that in your in the things that you're talking about. And the one thing that really pointed it out to me is when you said, if you see a small child playing soccer and they're happy, the ability to find happiness or joy by seeing somebody else be happy is something that I think that so many of us have lost along the way, right? We're engrossed in our own dilemma, our own situation, and it's hard to see outside of that. How did you find a way to, or how do you find a way to find happiness based on other people's joy and happiness, even though maybe things aren't going well for you at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. I think shifting your vocabulary is one of the other, not just keeping a gratitude journal and making it a practice, but a lot of times I'll think to myself, especially, on a day maybe that I have a very packed schedule, or I'm meeting with somebody who, I work in a 50-50 world of my district where, half the time people like what I do and half the time they don't. And I've really shifted my vocabulary and changed, I have to do something, to I get to. Yeah. I get to do something. And so I think really recognizing that we all have the opportunity to make the most, we don't get to always control what happens, the event. It's kind of the E+R=O. I'm sure you're both familiar with that terminology. And I will give a shout out to our community in Hilliard for really introducing that language to our students through the schools and our communities, because I think it's really important. And I think that's part of the growth mindset piece, is that changing your mind to say that you get to do something, no matter what the event happens that you can't control. You can always control your reaction. And you might not even control the outcome, but having the control over your reaction and really changing the way you're looking at something, I think it's the key to, it's definitely one of the biggest keys to the element of success.
I could not agree more with that. And what a powerful statement to conclude this show is, every day people go into work saying, I have to do this. I have to go in to pay my bills, or I have to go to this event and I don't want to. But how many people would trade places with you right now to get the opportunity to go to that job, or to go to that event, or to meet that person? And when you start to put yourself in the mindset of gratitude to say, I get to do these things, not only as an opportunity, but as a blessing, and the ability to even have the chance to live the way you are, or the life you are, you have to put that into your mindset and your focus. And it cannot be on the peripheral vision of your life. It has to be centered. And you can't center it until you're intentional. And Stephanie has just shown us how to be intentional with that. It is writing down words. It's showing a heart of gratitude, of selflessness, and developing that mindset of growth. And thank you so much for coming on the show today, Stephanie. We know that you are always on a tight schedule. As such, we greatly appreciate the time that you've spent with us. The discussion we just have is so impactful and meaningful to me. And I am very grateful that I did build up the courage, because that was my fear, was rejection. And I built up enough courage to knock on your door. And I'm very grateful that I did. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And thanks, Eric, for the great questions as well.
Absolutely. Stephanie, again, I just want to reiterate what Johnny said. Thank you so much for your time. Johnny, of course, thank you for creating and delivering this show to everyone. And our last thank you always goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Elements of Success podcast with Johnny Dawson. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Johnny comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at the Elements of Success, this is Eric Johnson asking you this. How do you reset your mindset? We'd love to hear from you. So reach out to Johnny on the social media platforms and let him know. Thanks again for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Elements of Success podcast. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, please click the subscribe button below. If you know anyone who would benefit from listening to this podcast, click the share button.